My name's Tom.
There we go.
And it's a very quiet microphone. And we are not going to talk about me, which is a good thing. We are going to talk about the future, which is much more interesting. So, whilst I do like all of those things, I'm going to start by apologising. God, so stay here. Don't wander off. Even though when you have a handheld microphone, the desire to wander off is quite compelling. Normally I put these things up on my website, and normally this is a URL. It's not a URL, that won't work. It will go up. When it does go up, I will send you the URL. So you will be able to just kind of go back through this presentation and watch any videos that happen to be there or anything like that. So I'll start with something which has absolutely nothing to do with my talk. This is just a very beautiful image from a blackboard. And it's from a quantum mechanics university. The artist goes around quantum mechanic universities of the world, taking photos of the blackboards as he finds them. And it's incredibly beautiful. And if you're into quantum mechanics, you'll know that ideas such as prediction and certainty are kind of tenuous. So for me, there's an obvious kind of parallel with the fact that if I'm going to stand here and talk to you about things that are going to happen, I clearly have no idea what I'm talking about. Or the very best I have, I'm going to make some assumptions. And I basically know about as much about what's going to happen as a proton. Here are some things that I made, which we sort of already alluded to. What do? I used to work in London. I used to work with a very large team. It's very difficult managing a lot of creative people. And eventually I decided that I didn't want to manage a lot of creative people. So I moved to Australia, where I don't manage anyone. And creatively, it's actually been an extraordinary year. I've had a fantastic year. It's really allowed me to open my mind, and I think that actually that's one of the things that we miss over here, which is that being a long way away, which we are, there actually is an enormous amount of freedom to think and to express and to play. Some of the projects that I worked on previously, the stuff I really like to do is working with cultural organisations, working with education organisations, basically trying to work out how we use digital tools, the digital tools that we have that are becoming absolutely embedded in our lives, and use them to extend their practice. How do you move artistic practice forward? How do you create platforms to move sort of music forward or move theatre forward? So we did very interesting projects. One of the first projects we did really was the YouTube Symphony Orchestra back in 2008, where we used YouTube to audition musicians from all around the world, and we took them to Carnegie Hall, and then a few years later we brought them to the Opera House for just the most spectacular time. We worked on... We wanted to put a kid into space with his experiment. This was the best prize ever. We were going to put a kid into space, but the lawyers said no. But we got to work with NASA on how you allow everyone in the world to have the same crack at putting their experiment into space. We got to work with the Guggenheim on a pet thing of mine, which is that I think that actually video art at the moment is in an extraordinary form because you have this completely new form, this kind of 3-minute form and this incredible experimental work, and actually it's just going to disappear if we don't document it. So we did this fantastic project called YouTube Play with Guggenheim. We hopefully you heard of a film we made with Ridley Scott called Life in a Day, again where we invited the world to collaborate and contribute, and they really contributed. We ended up with 5,000 hours of footage from one day. Web Lab is one of those very, very long projects which eventually I sadly had to leave, and other people who are more talented than me made it really good. But it's about making the internet physical. Build with Chrome is a project that we did when I got here, which is proudly Australian, and is about using HTML5 and WebGL to work with Lego. And maps, the art project, which is just something that is incredibly close to my heart. And that one at the top is Midsummer Night's Stream. which is currently called Midsummer Night Dreaming and is a project we're doing with the Royal Shakespeare Company where we're trying to reinvent theatre. That's it. Not going to talk about me anymore. Fun stuff, basically. Get to explore around the things. But I kind of want to talk about where we're going rather than what I've done. And I'm much more interested in how digital can be used to enchant, how digital can move beyond screens, what happens when we begin to take the information around us that we're so good at organising and storing and really bring it into the world in visual forms, which we're not so good at. So we're going to talk about that. This is a still from a video by Berg, which is called Incidental Media. What we're going to talk about is what information looks like, and I think information looks like. So from this point onwards, everything I talk about is pure hypothetical speculation. I think information looks like streams and tools and signals, and I'm going to explain what those are. I think the way we find it, our inputs, are going to be through sensors, speech, and this kind of notion of the quantified self. I think how we're going to consume it is going to be increasingly through forms of wearable technology, incredibly intimate technology, and what I like to call enchanted objects. And then we're going to round up by just trying to grasp what that means. What does that actually mean? How do we apply that? So I think that really comes down to kind of simplicity and relevance. Quick question: how many people have their own web page? That's good. That's about 40%. How many of you code that web page? Okay, that's most. That's great. How many of you have a mobile app? 4? Good job. I'm not sure whether you do. And how many of you coded your mobile app? 0. Which is because coding mobile apps is really hard. Whereas coding web apps or coding web pages is actually incredibly simple. The barriers to entry were incredibly low. If we want to go forward, let's go back for a second. Let's go back 20 years when the internet was like a few years old, and you could talk about numbers of servers in thousands and the number of users in millions. Like, the language that we created then was incredibly physical, and we still use it today. We talk about sites and addresses and pages, physical pages, and the information was hard-coded, and it was a language that you could... I took a book of CSS on holiday once, and my girlfriend nearly killed me. Or dumped me, I don't know. She didn't, we're still together. But it was incredible, and the click, the hyperlink. Now, this is a spectacular invention. This is one way to move from one page to any other page in the internet. One way. And you do it one way. You click. Like, it is ultimately the simplest, most elegant, most universal way to initiate an action. And the click is like history. And what we've replaced it with is loads of stuff. So we've replaced it with a lot more action. So if you think about that click as an action, the actions are now swipes, scans, you can press, you can speak, you can shake, you can bump, you can gesture, and best of all, it just knows. We're working on that one. And then, from there, you have all these contexts. So all of those actions are determined by context, because if the device knows a few details about you, like just, that you choose to share, like your browser history, or where you are, or what you're doing, or where you're going, or who you're dating, it can begin to make assumptions on what those actions mean. And then it starts to use things like your location, or the temperature, or proximity, or sounds, or velocities. These are things it senses. These are sensed elements. Or data like weather, signal strength, density, face recognition, emotion recognition, keywords. All of these become triggers. They all become clicks. So actually the number of clicks, the number of ways in which you can click becomes practically infinite. And then infinite is a big number. If anyone's interested in the picture, this is actually every level from Angry Birds. It's an artwork from the Science Museum in Ireland, and I just love it because it kind of brings home that sense of, oh yeah, we're living in a world now where we have complete interface actions that we don't even register. So this guy does artworks which are basically mapping your swipes. There's another one called turning Twitter on and off, or something like that. So let's recap that. You can read the words, just in case it didn't make sense when I said it. And the thing is that, you know, we live in a cloud-based world now. We expect all our devices to be connected. Oh, I'm actually going to read it because you guys at the back are struggling. So in the old internet, information was fixed in code that had to be read by browsers on a screen. In the new internet, information is fluid, an endless flow of data that appears to you in context, in a timely way and in a helpful way. So now we're going to cover those 3 ways in which that appears. I think these are all going to make complete sense to you. Streams. We all understand streams. Streams have been around before the internet. In fact, you know, time is a stream. Facebook is a stream. TV is a stream. Any kind of content which you consume that moves past you in time, that's a stream. So all of our news feeds, everything that we consume, all this content, these are all streams. It's kind of an intuitive thing. Tools. Tools are pretty obvious as well. We had tools before the internet. We had cameras and phones and notebooks and maps. And now we have cameras and phones and notebooks and maps. Only we've internetized them. Anything that lets you do something functional is a tool, in my book. Games are a tool. They distract you. You pick them up, they distract you, you put them down. They're just like knitting, except you can't knit on an iPad. Yet. Interesting one. Here's the interesting bit. Signals. Alerts, nudges, notifications. This sense of information that is presented to you at the right time in the right place, that is entirely personal to you, that is not hard-coded, that is basically taking from all of those signals, from all of those elements that exist in the world, and giving you the perfect piece of information that you need to know right now, like exactly how long it takes to walk from my house to this building, you know, preferably 5 minutes before I need to walk from my house to this building. That's an incredibly useful piece of information. And I do want a computer to give me that piece of information. But you have to do it incredibly carefully because we get them wrong. And it's incredibly pushy. And believe me, I didn't actually want to use, I don't know if you know this, this is Google Now, which is kind of this. And I didn't really want to use Google Now. I was looking around for other examples. But it's actually a really good example of what that means, where it's gathering information that takes information in the world and information that you've given it and combines them to provide timely, useful bits. It's a sort of secret, quiet thing that's actually rather powerful. I'd keep an eye on it and work out how it can work for you. So, how do we get stuff in there? Let's start with glass. I've tried them. Anyone else tried them? No, they're not really that common yet, are they? My team in New York worked on them a lot, so it is something that I've understood for about a year and have been working with in my head and trying to work out how I feel about a future mediated by a screen. A future with that sense of, truly fluid information that can pass to you without you having to do the incredibly rude thing of looking at your phone. And I still am not completely sure, but one thing I do know for certain is that speech is becoming incredibly important. Computer-recognized speech is becoming kind of integral to how we're going to interface with computers, because it's much harder to have a user error when you're just talking. It should be. At the moment, it's quite easy to get a user error. And when we begin to realize that we're going to be talking to computers an awful lot, that changes everything about how you present that information. It changes how you need to think about the architecture of the information. It changes how you need to think about the architecture of the input. It changes everything about that experience. It's not just glass, it's pretty much everything. There's another really nice example by Aaron Koblin called Peanut Gallery, which just allows you to throw title cards slate cards into black and white movies. And just for a game, just for a fun way to work out how easy this is, how clever it is, it's worth checking out. It's called Peanut Gallery. rise of the sensors. So I haven't bought this yet, which is unlike me, because normally I buy everything, and then it sits under my desk, because I don't know how to use it. But this is a seemingly incredibly beautiful, very clever little set of sensors called LAPCA. And what it does is, I think it just literally measures all of those sorts of things that we were talking about from the world. I did have a long list, I'm not going to go through them, but all of the things like moisture and humidity and temperature and electromagnetic fields and these kind of things, and just visualizes them for you on your phone. Ultimately, this vision of synthesizing the world's information and allowing it to arrive for you so that it's incredibly relevant to you is reliant on a world of sensors. The Internet of Things is reliant on a world of sensors, if you come across that idea, which is also incredibly important. Did you know a webcam can track your pulse? Yeah? No? I think this is fascinating, because you're there going, oh, wow, there's an awful lot we can work out. Webcam can see your face, can recognize your face, can do facial recognition, can work out where that is. Apparently, you've got a vein that goes right there that throbs. So what it does is it analyzes the green channel from the vein here and looks for optical intensity. And then because it's going to pulse on that green channel, it just counts the pulses. Oh, that's your pulse. And it gives you your pulse back. There's an iPhone app that does it. You do this, tells you your pulse. Not saying anything about it, just it's kind of cool. And it moves to this other really interesting space, which is a growing space, and I'm wearing a thing. I'm wearing a Up, which is from Jawbone, which is very similar to a fuel band, only my one measures my sleep pattern as well, which is really useful, because it turns out I don't sleep well, because I have an 18-month-old son. And I didn't know that I didn't sleep well. If you look at yourself and your life, you can kind of draw these kind of conclusions. This is not going to change my world, but it is a very interesting phenomenon that there are people who are beginning to show incredible results from really tracking what they do, from tracking everything that goes into their body and everything that exists around their body. And if you can outsource that tracking to sensors, to computers that don't interfere with what you're doing on an everyday basis, which is basically this and a world of stuff that's on its way, which we're going to look at a couple of things, then you're really, again, you're in a really interesting space about how you, as a company, can begin to inform and educate and give timely, useful information to people who have your product. Outputs. What does this all look like? So, this is stuff we make, and I always think one of the great errors is that people think it stops here. People trying to plan 5 years into the future about culture don't go 5 years into the past and go, how likely would we think it would be that actually PCs would just be going off a cliff and everyone would be talking about mobile. Like, everyone would be wanting their information on a tablet display. How likely 2 years ago would you think that, or 3 years ago, would you think that Apple wouldn't actually have the majority of the market share for mobile devices? Well, everyone who made Apple-only apps probably didn't think that far. Sorry, that sounds terribly Android-y. I don't really like doing that. It's just kind of relevant. If it was the other way around, I would be saying it the other way around, I promise. It doesn't stop here. We're moving forward. This is a Pebble, which is a watch, which runs on Android. Apple are doing a watch. We have glasses. There's new and really interesting wearable technology around the corner. You've got like bendable screens, sort of transparent touch screens, digital ink, nano sensors, metabolic sensors. There's an awful lot of interesting stuff going on. You don't have to dig very hard to go and find it. It's not like buried in PDFs and scientific papers. It's right there, sort of in the Samsung what we're working on type pages. It's right there. It's on its way. So there are interesting experiments going on, and actually normally they're happening by young people. So there's a very interesting graduate experiment with bicycles, where the Dutch are testing belts called vibro belts, and the belts vibrate to tell you where you should go rather than giving you a heads-up display or a map on a screen. And they're just as effective, and people remember where they went. They actually remember what they saw. There's some girls who just finished, and I think have now got in production, a helmet, an invisible cycling helmet, which acts much more like a crash, what they call airbag. Philips are working on machines that sing to you rather than beep at you. This is a jacket where you plug your phone in, clearly, and then you change the volume using the zips, using the way in which it was meant to things. And you know, the little things that normally sit around your things are the earbuds, and it keeps you warm if you put some trousers on. And this is actually just a patent. I love this patent because it's from Sony. It's for a smart pillow. And they want to do two specific things. One, they want to measure your REM sleep so that it can give you an alarm call when you're in light REM rather than deep REM. In other words, when you should wake up rather than that thing where you wake up feeling groggy. And the other thing, which I think is really weird, is they want to sort of emit special radio waves. I'm going to quote this. Emit special radio waves tuned to coincide with certain brain waves during different phases of sleep. Because that doesn't sound creepy at all. And then you will sleep better, which if you don't sleep well is actually a really good, important thing to do. But also sounds an awful lot like Brave New World. This is really intimate stuff and insanely interesting. These are, has everyone seen these? These are like tattoos, electrical tattoos, which bond to the skin, and because of the way she's worked them, they don't come off. So that means you can begin to track those vital signs that you want to be sending to your phone, so that you really can begin to track your mood dependent on your blood sugar levels or your pulse or other kind of elements. And you can translate muscle movements into signals. So this point, this isn't wearable technology. This is kind of like right on the edge of magic. And actually, they're saying that you, or she's suggesting that can work inside you as well and can look for warning signs that we know exist, but we have no way of telling. So you can warn people that they're about to have a heart attack before they have a heart attack, which I think is a good idea. But all of these things have implications as well. This is a project we worked on with Berg, which was about light. I'm a huge fan of trying to remove the screens from the world. I want to I want all of this information, all of this data, all of these things that we're talking about, and I don't want them through a metal and glass screen. I want them to simply exist. I want them to be organic, to appear in as natural way as possible. And my perfect vision of the future is not one mediated by screens and not one mediated by glass and metal, but one where actually the information appears to us in a timely, relevant, useful way, in the ways that we want it to appear, on organic things like paper or wood or light. If there's got to be advertising, there's got to be advertising, but make the advertising useful and make it disappear into the world that we want to live in, rather than this metal world. So let's do another quick recap. What I was trying to say is that all of this fluid data means streams of content, useful tools, and new assistive signals, all based on data we collect and share via sensors. We're going to get our internet, whatever it feels or looks like, via our environment, in wearable tech, on flexible screens, enchanted objects, and digital paper, ideally organically. Also, very important, the simplest solutions will win. Just because you're big doesn't mean it works. Everyone know what this is? It's a spork. Anyone use a spork? One person. So I'm going with the majority not using a spork, and I hope you won't take this personally. But 3 really simple tools beats 1 quite simple tool. And you see this over and over and over again. Humans use simple tools to create complex solutions. They do not like complex tools to create simple solutions. If you have a complex tool, like a car, you make it damned simple. It's got a go pedal and a stop pedal and a steering wheel. When things are simple, we will use them. Then, when they are simple, we actually use them to do incredibly beautiful, complicated things. We use tools. That's what we do. But there's a great problem, which is that we generally try and make our tools complex. We pack them full of things. So we try and make sporks where we add more and more features and more stuff. Just in case I've got anything interesting to say on my last page of notes. If you want to sound clever about this, it's called cognitive overloading. Cognitive overloading means giving people too much things to think about. It's kind of one of those issues about manual cars. If you take someone who's used to driving an automatic and put them in a manual, cognitive overload, 3 pedals? What do I do with the 3rd pedal? It's too much. So, build knives, not sporks. Whatever you're doing. The second thing is, do something, not everything. This is, my partner just finds it absolutely insanely infuriating that she needs 4 remote controls to use our television. And I've got to agree with her. I have to come and turn the television on. So, and I don't know, I mean, we can get it down to 2, but we can't get it down to 1, to work the television, to do the thing with the channels. It's a very simple tool. So we did a complex data analysis of which buttons we used on the remote control, and we discovered that this is a better remote control. One of the wonderful things about the internet is you have data. People use what you make, and because they use what you make, you can see what they do. So you've got this information to make this kind of decision. Poor old Samsung, they have no idea that people don't actually want to use I don't know what those words are, TTX/mix button on a daily basis. Simple. Beautiful. The other thing is that, this is my little boy. Whatever we do, I was thinking about this on the way here, I was like, if you could go back in time and affect something that fundamentally shapes society, would we do it? You know, would you go back in time and lobby really hard that tobacco should maybe not be considered good for your health? Would you go back in time and maybe argue that sucrose or the corn syrup stuff, maybe that wasn't a good idea? Would you go back in time and say, the cars, can we maybe, I don't know, make them more communal or make them less polluting? Things which utterly shape our society. You can't go back in time because we haven't invented a time machine. But you're in an industry that is affecting something which is profoundly going to shape our culture and our society over the next 20 years. So whatever you do is important. Everything you do has an opportunity, even if it's not hugely taken up, to inspire and influence the next generation of designers and creators and engineers to build a better solution. Everything you do has an opportunity. So wherever it is, even if you're pitching an ad, if you've got a client and they sell toilet paper, Google have public toilets mapped on their maps. You've got that data, so let's build an app that shows parents where the nearest public toilet is, and then sell that to the toilet paper manufacturer as a useful, timely, relevant way to help people, rather than TV commercials with little dogs. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much for listening. I ran a teeny bit over due to a habit of wandering off, but does anyone have any questions? I'm doing your bit. Do you want to come do it? Okay. I'm assured that you do actually have questions. I love it when no one's got any questions. That's great. Any of it not make sense? We could go back in time.
I do have a question. I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more about glass, because I have a feeling that if I explain to my mum what glass does, she's going to be like, why the hell would you have things going over your eyes, you would fall over?
Yeah.
I said to someone with a big scab on their knee, fall over their eye. So,
yeah.
What do you like, what do you not like about glass?
I think you're probably less likely to fall over than the current state where people just literally aren't able to dual process, because you have a world of peripheral vision that's still going on. It's not you're blind. I mean, this can exist where you want it to. So if you want it in front and center, or if you want it off to the side, and obviously you shouldn't operate heavy machinery while wearing glass, and these kind of things. There's a world of etiquette that we're nowhere near, and that's going to be very interesting to work out how we do this. And what we're doing at the moment is we are experimenting. Actually, we're allowing a few people to use glass, and we're working out how they work with it. And I think very importantly, we're working out how the world responds to that, so that we can make sure, because we care, that we're not producing something which isn't ideal. I think it's going to be an interesting phase. It is an interesting phase. We're a long way away from it. I don't think we're going to get these things licensed over here anytime soon, but I'm not sure. I don't know any more than Eric Schmidt does. And that's what he says. The things I like about it are that it's a completely new way of interfacing with the world, and actually if you are looking to have a natural interaction with someone and capture that information, or if you are looking to simply stay in the conversation and you do have information that you would otherwise be sitting there looking at your phone, which we all do. We all do this. That's going to be an interesting shift to see whether that works. And the things that I don't like about it are that at the moment, I think exactly the same. I was a very early mobile phone adopter. So in 1998, I had a big phone. It's not that early, but as a student, it was quite early. And people hated it. They really objected to it. And I now, as an older person, kind of get that same slight visceral sense of, you have something between us. You are wearing technology between us. And I don't know. I'm only speaking personally. I don't know anything about how, I can only speak from my personal reaction to it, which is that I think that's something which we will grow into, just the same way that we can grow into a lot of new technologies. But it's really interesting. I'm glad we're doing it, personally. Any other questions? Yes. Okay.
I thought one thing you said that was really fascinating was about not viewing data through metal and glass, but wanting to have something projected onto wood or light.
Well, projection is. I didn't actually say projection.
So you didn't say projection. I didn't know.
I didn't mean projection.
So that's my question is about. Do you have what were some examples of that? When you were talking about that, I thought that was fascinating. Imagine.
Substrate. I mean, it's really if you look at the stuff we say we're about to invent, and then you look at substrate technology and the ability to. So substrates, e-paper works by running an electrical grid underneath. There's a number of different ways of doing it. Substrates. And basically, substrates like a paint that can change colour. And it either does it by having lots of tiny little things that turn around, or by having bits that float to the top based on the charge that you afford them. So this is a layman's version of how e-paper works. And at the moment, the problem is that you have to have a kind of solid grid, so you end up with the Kindle. But actually, that the principle of that mechanic can be applied to paint, can be applied to varnishes, can be applied to pretty much anything. There's a material called graphene, which they've just worked out how to stop electricity passing through it, which is great because it's one of the great conductors. And now they can stop the electricity as well. That means they can make incredibly thin screens. There's an awful lot of stuff going on with not just glass, but there's an awful lot of stuff going on with retinal contact lens technology. You can have pixels on your contact lens. Sounds kind of creepy. And actually, when you start to think about that, then you start to think about how you present those contact lenses. Because why would you have it floating in the sky if it could just appear on the surface? And the second you can have it appearing on the surface, it doesn't have to appear on the surface. Ideally, my email won't appear on the surface. But if it appears on the surface to me and not to those around me, then that's a damn sight better than this, actually, because this is a barrier between me and you. And if I could close it, this is a nicer experience immediately. So I'm a huge fan of that. And actually what I'm very interested in is there's the slight divergence between this, or it's called biophilia. It's this idea that we are naturally happier in organic circumstances. We're happier under trees and under sunlight than we are under strip light and formica. I'm happier on a wooden floor wearing cotton than I am on a plastic dance floor at 2 o'clock in the morning. That could just be me, but the principal theory is that this is actually is an innate sense that we are more natural. And what's happening at the moment, which is really interesting, is that the technology companies which are governed by engineers are sort of getting there, but they're still much more interested in what we can do, and what we can do is often dictated by these forms of technology. And I just think in about 20 years we're going to look back at them and feel that they are incredibly clunky ways to interface. Just like we look back at the computers 20 years ago and think they're clunky, and the computers 20 years before that needed a forklift to bring into the room, and punch cards to operate. So it's just not... We have a terrible tendency to focus on where we are rather than light projection about what we would like the world to be. And when, as designers, the important bit about this is that you create that future for those designers. If you keep making things which are vision videos which have shiny glass and big computers, then the designers and the engineers continue to build around that. If you challenge them to present this information to you in an organic way, in a beautiful way, then you're challenging them. And believe me, my devs love a challenge. So I'm working on a little mood tracking project at the moment. Sorry, I'm talking. Anyone else got important questions? No, good. I'm working on a little mood tracking project. You all sign invisible NDA. And what I want it to be is a pebble with a volume switch, because I have mood swings. I tend to get quite high and then quite low. So and it's very useful for me to track those and compare them with my diet and how I sleep and stuff like that, so that you can measure and modify this. They're quantified self stuff. Very interesting. And I don't want to take out my phone and press a happy face. It's like it's the world's worst thing. I am on 11. Everything is buzzing. The world is intense. It's fantastic to be alive. No, this is not what I want to do. Let me press the little happy face. Likewise, when I'm very, very low, again, really don't want to go, yeah, this is how I feel on a phone where the keypad doesn't work. So this is the principle is that actually what I want is an interface which works for me right then. I want a pebble that sits in my pocket with a volume switch. I want to be able to click it when I am in a moment, when something is occurring, and I want to be able to say very, very easily in a very natural way, like up, down, happy face, smiley face, without having to look at it. And then I want it to send a message to my mobile phone, so that if I have my mobile phone out and I'm taking a photo anyway, it goes, it notifies me so that I can take a photo if it's relevant. And then I want to send it to my computer, so when I'm sitting in front of a keyboard, it can send me an email, do something I'm doing anyway, send me another bloody email, and say, hey, yesterday at like 12, you were kind of, it was a good time. What was going on there? Because that's the right time for me to respond to that. When I am in the right place to do it. These are very simple things. This is a very simple process, but it's find the right tool at the right place for the right solution. Not what you asked, was it? Was it sort of what you asked? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, good. Any other questions? Hey.
Just moving on slightly.
Sports.
Yeah, I'm actually a big believer in sports. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Technology must have its fans.
So pushing it one step further, you've taken away your pebble.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
You've now got it tattooed on your wrist, and so it can actually monitor the levels in your blood system to work out how happy you are. At what point does
Yes,
sorry.
Going with you. Staying here.
At what point do we start to be worried that the technology is literally in us now and can be hacked? So,
that's a good question. If you've got your computer open at the back, you might want to look up transhumanism right now, because actually that's pretty much that ideological, philosophical point that we actually will integrate technology into the body because it becomes more and more natural to do so, until we reach a point where we are able to, Obama's just put $5 billion towards mapping the synapses and neurons. It's an insanely long way away before we can begin to start to think about brains and that kind of interaction and how the brain works and whether you can map it, model it, and whether actually we're all living in computers. But it's not an uninteresting conversation. Most importantly, you also, most importantly, that data isn't, you don't, how do you put this? We share data with people all the time. That's what we do. We share data for services. That's what we do. If you are using your phone at the moment, you are sharing data in order to receive a service. You may also be paying, which is interesting. And we understand that transaction. I'm not sure whether the transparency around it is there yet, and I'm not sure whether the language is around it there yet. Again, I know an awful lot of people who are very keen to make that transparent, and one of our great challenges at Google is to keep talking and keep trying to help people understand how that transaction works, because we rely on trust, and that's our the real money is trust. We don't have trust. No one gives us anything. And I don't think that language is there yet. So I don't think that's... So what happens with the technology as it gets further inside you is who gets that information, where it's stored, how secure it is, whether it's hackable. There are pacemakers at the moment, and this is amazing. There are pacemakers at the moment in the States where they have advanced technology where you can hack the pacemaker. The patient doesn't have access to the data from the pacemaker because they don't own the pacemaker. The insurance company owns the pacemaker, so the insurance company gets the information from the pacemaker about how you're doing, and then they will tell your doctor if there's a problem. And the doctor can apply to the insurance company to go, I think this is how it works, Again, a coder, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
They don't stop the pacemaker.
No. Well, no, that's a good question. Why don't we go and ask them that, because I really don't know. We are talking in sort of spurious terms about the future. I started this talk by saying I have no idea what's going to happen. I will, when we stop, say, I'm not even talking about anything we do. I'm just talking about stuff that I find interesting about how the future might evolve, interesting ideas about the difference that you can make to it between designing for a hardwired world and designing for a softwired world, differences you can make between designing for utility over designing for commerce, differences you can make by really kind of trying to think about how we use this technology and how we inspire future generations to use it. But I have no idea what's going to happen next, and I think that's incredibly exciting. Thank you very much.